The Irish are the blacks of Europe, and Dubliners are the blacks of Ireland, and the Northside Dubliners are the blacks of Dublin. So say it once, say it loud. I'm black and I'm proud.
Hello and welcome once again to the Cine-Files, where each week we enter the world of a great film, we explore its themes, the history, the filmmaking, and the influence it has on us today. My name is Steve Morris. I'm a filmmaker and directing instructor in Los Angeles, California.
Hey everyone, my name is John Roca. I'm a writer, producer, and host here in Los Angeles, California, and voiceover artist as well, and I'm excited, and a big music lover, so I'm excited today to get into the movie we're going to get into after, of course, we pay tribute to the late, great director of this movie.
And that, of course, is Alan Parker, who we lost about a week ago. And you know, it's a weird thing that you and I do, which is like, I go on Twitter, I see that tragically we've lost some great person, and the first thing I do is text you and say, okay, what movie are we doing?
Yeah, let's debate what movie we're going to do for him or her. And yeah. And
this time there was no debate.
Yeah,
you said the commitments, and I'm like, that's what I want to do too. I love this movie. I hadn't seen it in a long time.
Yeah.
It's a joyful film. Even though it's not a happy film in all sorts of ways, but because of the music, I think it's just really joyful.
Well, I think that's the gift of this film. It's like Rocky and Bad News Bears. Guess what? The hero doesn't win at the end. And I love that. And there's a great little moment, which, well, of course, we'll get to as we get to the movie, but there's a great little moment near the end where Lip says to, I forget the guy's name, Richard, I think, says to him, hey, that's the thing. It wasn't about selling records, but that's what we could have done. But this moment in time is such a treasure because of what could have been. It's actually something to savor and enjoy rather than to regret. What a incredibly psychologically healthy way to approach a situation that doesn't end up working out with you making a lot of money and becoming famous and what have you. And I thought that's great. Same thing with Rocky. Like, Rocky lost the fight at the end. The Bad News Bears don't win that game. And it makes it even more precious of a movie because of that.
Well, and I think, and we'll talk about this throughout, is that it makes the movie about something else.
Yes.
Something that, because I don't have a big record contract, but I can relate to having a dream and struggling through it, and I think all of us can.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about Alan Parker, who's born in 1944. He grew up in a very working-class environment in London. He was a good student, had no interest in film, didn't plan on going into film, did like photography, studied science, and his job was going into advertising.
Yeah.
And it's funny that we've had this multiple times, is that there are multiple directors. So many directors have a different pathway to becoming a director.
Yeah.
And several of them lately have done it through advertising. We just talked about, I just drew a blank on his name, but the director of Chariots of Fire.
Yeah, Hugh Hudson.
He literally is parallel to Alan Parker. They ended up working at the same company under David Putnam, who became the producer of Chariots of Fire. Yeah. And Alan Parker, just like Hugh Hudson, did TV ads. Mm-hmm. He formed his own company in 1970. They had lots of big campaigns. He was an associate of Ridley Scott, who's another one who came up through advertising right at the same era. His first feature was in 1973, a film called Hard Feelings that BBC bought and put it on TV. And they went, hey, you're pretty good. And they hired him to work on some stuff. And he won some BAFTAs and he won some Emmys. And then he goes to direct his first bigger film. And it is one that, strangely enough, has come up many, many times. And it is a movie we will never do on the Cine-Files.
Yes.
But that is Bugsy Malone.
Bugsy Malone! Maybe if enough people donate at a certain level, we'll do Bugsy Malone. I love that movie. It's a nostalgic movie for me, certainly. A young Jodie Foster, a young Scott Baio, essentially sending up the mafia films that had started to consume the theater in the 70s, thanks to The Godfather. And just a very funny, well, I guess I can't say very funny, but certainly a nostalgic smile on your face for those of us who grew up at that time remembering that movie. I mean, they use cream puffs instead of machine gun bullets. It's very fun. And the kid who plays the head mafia don is just fantastic and acts beyond his age. And so it is, and I agree with you, it is one we'll probably never do, but it's one that I look back on fondly for sure.
It's that era. I watched a lot of TV when I was a kid, and I watched Bugsy Malone many times. Probably the last time I saw it, I was 13.
Yeah, maybe.
No idea what that movie's like. After that, he does, produced by David Putnam, he does Midnight Express, which we talked about recently because we talked about Chariots of Fire.
Yeah.
And Oliver Stone wrote the screenplay, and he won the Oscar for that. And then into Fame, 1980. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of connections between Fame and The Commitments.
Yeah, yeah. Somebody wrote about it, comparing Fame to The Commitments. I was reading a couple of movie reviews in retrospect, and they were like, this is a better version, that The Commitments is a better, more fleshed out version of Fame. He allows the scenes to breathe. He allows the characters to exist in longer stretches of time, so you have time to connect to them rather than a series of, explosive musical numbers that are woven together. And that's not a knock against Fame. It's just, as you mature as a director, you start to understand what really works character-wise for a piece like this.
In 1984, he does Birdie with Matthew Modine and Nick Cage.
Yeah. Criminally underappreciated film. Criminally underappreciated. Yeah.
Well, and another one that really messed me up is 1987, Angel Heart.
Oh, yeah.
Man, that movie, that freaked me out.
I remember the controversy around that movie, too, Steve. And because it's Robert De Niro playing the devil, and then you've got this very... you got voodoo in this thing. Lisa Bonet was coming out of the Cosby Show, or was still on the Cosby Show, and then she's nude in this movie, having these weird sexual things with chicken blood.
It's crazy.
Yeah, all of it. And this is like peak Mickey Rourke of the 80s, right? Sure. He carries this movie with De Niro, and it's actually a damn good movie. But it's unsettling as hell.
It is really unsettling. And then in 88, Mississippi Burning. And I just want to point out, we've gone from Bugsy Malone, kids with cream puffs, cream pies, being mobsters, into this heavy, Midnight Express, going on to Fame, which is this musical, hopeful kid film.
Yeah.
Birdie, which is weird and artsy. Angel Heart, which is dark and disturbing, and now Mississippi Burning, a civil rights, drama with Gene Hackman. I mean, that's an incredible range of films.
Yeah, agreed. And it seemed like he worked out Bugsy Malone just to see that he could do a feature film. And then he goes into these very tough, harrowing films. And you can say what you want about Fame and the music, but those kids are struggling to be seen, struggling to be heard, struggling to achieve a certain level of notoriety, and the struggle and the sacrifice that they have to go through. Same thing with Midnight Express, the sacrifice that he has to go through to survive that situation as an American in a Turkish prison. They still reference Midnight Express as a never get stuck in a Turkish prison. And then into Birdie, which is a film about PTSD in Vietnam.
Yeah.
And then into what you're talking about here with Angel Heart. It's a very hardcore exploration of religion and the devil and all of that. And then into Mississippi Burning, which is a very stark exploration of the racism that existed in our country in the 60s. Well, I mean, at the time, yes, and still now, but certainly at the time of the Civil Rights Movement, how that was happening down there. Now, for those of you who are listening who know, it is as historically inaccurate probably as Braveheart is, but it's still an enjoyable film for what it is, and the message for what it is, I like. Willem Dafoe and him are fantastic actors.
They're great. It's great performances, and they roll right out of that. He rolls right out of that into The Commitments, the film we're talking about today. Evita in 1996, which is a film that I have mixed feelings about.
Sure.
I found a quote from him that I wanted to say because I like his attitude so much. He said, "My mentor was the great director Fred Zinnerman, who I'm used to show all my films to until he died. He said something to me that I always try to keep in my head every time I decide on what film to do next. He told me that making a film was a great privilege and you should never waste it."
Wow.
It's so funny. When we put out our lists of great directors, no one puts Alan Parker on those lists.
Yeah.
And yet, when you look at that string of movies, none of them are bad.
Yeah.
Evita might be the weakest in my opinion.
Yeah.
But in general, that's a really, really solid list of films all over the place in terms of genre.
Yeah. His hit to miss ratio is certainly better than Ridley Scott's.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of directors, So I think and this happens, Steve, in every decade. There are directors that just get kind of glossed over or lost because these other directors are such auteurs that they seem to eclipse these other good / workman-like directors who develop solid product in multiple genres.
Right. Yeah. Do you remember how you first came to the Commitments?
Oh, hell yeah. Opening night. Are you kidding? This is the time where I'm transitioning into appreciating independent films, smaller films, British films especially, Irish films. Like I felt like there was a certain level of snobbery on my end about it because I was like, yeah, you all enjoy your little comedies. I'm running off to go see this like British film. There's maybe 10 people in the theater, and there's a community here. We understand that this is a film that we gotta see in the theater. And I remember that in Virginia, Shirlington Cinemas was the one to go to. But at the time, of course, this is 91, so I'm in my first year of the service. So I probably, when I came home, went to, on a break, went to go see this by myself on a Saturday afternoon and just fell in love with the movie and subsequently rented the rest of the trilogy, The Van and Snapper, and enjoyed those. So I've always had a massive love for Irish cinema and Irish films, and this one is just incredible.
It's funny, just as you were saying that, it occurred to me something I'd never thought of before, which is that I think the era of mid-college until I moved to LA to go to film school in 94 is my peak movie watching era.
Oh, yeah.
Is that's when I really, because, right as I graduated from college, I'm trying to break into comic books as a writer, which basically meant I wasn't doing that much, and Karen and I had just started dating, and it was like, I saw everything.
Yeah.
And
Isn't
I rented.
It great?
Yeah. I don't, by the time when I got to film school, I barely had time to ever see a movie.
Yeah.
And mine's same thing. I don't know if I saw it opening night. I definitely saw it in the theater in Berkeley. I think it was at the UA Theater. And I got to say, not only did I see it and love it and rent it, but this is when I used to listen to soundtracks.
Oh, yeah.
And I listened to this soundtrack over and over and over again. Karen, too, we both loved it. It's a fantastic soundtrack.
Dark End of the Street is still one of my karaoke staples. And whenever it comes on when I'm driving, full-throated singing of that song. And what's incredible about this movie, as I know we'll get into it in a few minutes, Steve, is the soundtrack, all the songs you hear are being sung by the people we're about to meet before they actually come together as a group. It's an incredible anomaly when it comes to films about music that the songs you're hearing are already the group formed later on in the movie singing the songs that are from other R&B and soul artists.
Well, and we'll get into this, but the reason for that is that Alan Parker wanted to cast musicians.
Yes.
He was as much about putting a band together as he was about putting a cast together. And that's what enables them to do exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
A little bit of pre-production. This is from the book by Roddy Doyle. Roddy Doyle could not find a publisher for his book. He self-published in the late 80s, which is a really amazing thing. And people found the book. A whole bunch of people sent it to their producers. And Roddy made a deal that he insisted on writing a screenplay. And himself, he had never written a screenplay. And I like this a lot, is that he spent months and months writing it. It took him weeks to write the first 24 pages. He sent the first 24 pages to the producers in London. They completely panicked. And then they called him in and said, you have to come to London right away. He sat down with them for several days, and they showed him how to turn the 24 pages into 8 pages. And he says that those few days with those producers was one of the greatest educational experiences of his life.
Wow.
And this is the thing that's so interesting, is that movies and novels are just different. You don't need to, in a novel, you got to describe all the details and every single thing that happens. In a movie, you come in late and you just get this little piece, and then you go out, and that's what happens. But he still finished the first screenplay. They still weren't happy with it. They brought in a couple of pros, which is Dick Clement and Ian LaFrancais, and they really pull out the structure and the plots. And then they say, we want to bring in Alan Parker. And Alan Parker was nervous about doing this because he's a Londoner. He's not from Ireland. And I don't know if you knew this, John, but there's actually some conflicts between the English and the Irish It's gone on a real long time.
Yeah, yeah. You know, he changes his story every time he talks about it. I read multiple interviews with Alan in preparation for this movie because I love it so much. And he's talking, yeah, you're right, Steve. He was intimidated, but he's also said, like, I had done a bunch of stuff in America, and I kind of wanted to do something closer to home. And so so that's why, another reason why he chose the project. He wanted to kind of come back a little bit, touch base with his roots. But also was intimidated about the prospect of taking this on. And there was a lot of effort put in on his side and the production staff before they shot a frame of this thing.
Well, because they really wanted to get it right. They
Yeah.
wanted to get that culture right. And this is one of the reasons that he didn't cast stars. I mean, they didn't have a huge budget, but he's like, well, there aren't stars that a whole bunch of stars that come from Northern Dublin,
Right.
which means that we'd have to bring in actors and then teach them how to be like that.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what he didn't want to do. So instead, his casting directors, which is John and Ross Hubbard, travel from London up to Dublin. And they spend 2 months looking for musicians, just going club to club to club. And there's a big music scene in Dublin, and they're Alan Parker's with them doing the same things, and they end up having an open call. He says they saw 3,000 musicians.
I wouldn't be surprised. And that's why you have that sequence in the movie when What's-His-Face is seeing all those musicians essentially simulating what they went through in casting.
Well, it's not just simulating, because those are the musicians that they saw.
Yeah, and a few of those become a group known as the Corrs. If people don't know the Corrs, they end up becoming they had just started to form the brother and the two sisters, I think it is. They just started to form before the movie started, and they were all cast in the movie and different parts. And so you see them there. And I don't know if you know this, Steve, or you were going to get to this, but for the Lips character, they had looked at Van Morrison. And Van Morrison, and he had actually come in and took a meeting with Alan Parker, and apparently the meeting went terribly, and he didn't cast him. But he approved them using any of his music that they wanted to use for the film, which I don't think they ended up using. But this is a whole nother film if you have Van Morrison in the Lips part of this character, in the Lips character. Yeah,
I think it ruins the movie.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with you.
It's so funny. You said before about Alan Parker's story changing, because I heard that story too, except I heard it different. Because what I heard is that it wasn't that Van Morrison said you can use my music. It's that Van Morrison said, I'll only do it if you use exclusively my music.
That sounds more like Van Morrison. I would believe that.
But I don't know, and this is, it's kind of, we've said this before in the show sometimes. You and I tell these stories that we know from behind the scenes. That doesn't mean those are the truth.
Exactly. Which adds to the legend, of course.
Yeah, I mean, we can't really know. He, as I said, he was really looking for real musicians, and he was looking for real characters.
Yeah.
He was looking for people that were really interesting, and he narrows it down to this cast, of which only 2 actors, one is Joey Lipp, and I think the other one was Bernie, had like acting experience. All the rest of them are really just musicians. I don't mean to say just musicians, as if being a musician isn't a big deal. And he goes into 5 weeks of rehearsal, which is, and what they did was, in the mornings, they're rehearsing the band.
Yeah.
In the afternoon, they're rehearsing acting. And that the rehearsal process isn't like a rehearsal process you and I have been in, because these aren't actors. So there's constant improvisation. Alan Parker is improvising with them, throwing lines back and forth. They're writing down kind of what the stuff those actors are saying, and he's looking at the script and go, okay, in this scene, the sax player is supposed to have this line, and Deco, the singer, is supposed to have this line, and he doesn't like the way they say it, so he you know what, let's give that line to Natalie, or let's give that line to Imelda. Apparently, what he said is that the strongest people were the girls, and so he continually made their parts bigger.
No surprise.
And took lines away from the other people. Yeah. Deco had way more lines when the thing started, and he ends up having very few lines, which works really, really well.
Yeah, and all 3 of those actresses are all still working today. Maria Doyle Kennedy went on. She's like, if you watch Orphan Black, she is a huge part of Orphan Black. She's done a number of things. Angelique Ball still working in British. I see her pop up all the time because Lindley's such a massive Anglophile. We watch these strange British TV shows together. She pops up all the time with arcs. And of course, Bernie's still working nowadays too. I mean, remember her from Pulp Fiction? She's there when they stab Uma Thurman. She's the girl in the room there when they stab Uma Thurman in the heart.
I had no idea that was the same person.
Yeah, she pops up in many, many, many things and still working today. Yeah, and there's those are the 3 that really work the most coming out of this film. So no surprise that they were the best.
And they started rehearsing, Alan Parker's trying to figure out what are the songs. And he narrows it down first to 300 songs, which is still a lot.
Oh, my God.
Then he narrows that once he gets a cast and he kind of sees what kind of vocal ranges they have, gets down to 75 songs, which they rehearse. So they're rehearsing 75 songs.
Wow.
58 of which are in the film.
Wow. Really? You
58.
hear 58 songs in the film?
That's what they said, man.
I'm surprised. Okay.
That's a lot. Would you like to get into the commitments?
All right.
So we hear Treat Her Right.
I want to tell you a story. Every man ought to know.
Do you know who's singing Treat Her Right?
Is it, who's the main guy that does the...
Yes, it's Jimmy Rabbit. It's Robert
Jimmy
Arkins. And this is one of the fascinating things, is that Alan Parker thought he was actually one of the best musicians that he auditioned. Fantastic trumpet player, great voice. And there was a long time where he was in the running to play Deco, to play the main singer.
Yeah.
And then because of what happens when Andrew Strong comes along, which we'll get into later, is that they go, okay, you're not going to play that. But he loved this guy. And so he gives him the one non-musical part in the movie.
Yeah.
And to make up for it, he let him sing this song. And he's great.
Which is on the, if you get the Blu-ray, they have a cut scene of him singing this song with the band, which is great.
Oh, I haven't seen that. I'll definitely watch that.
It's pretty cool.
And now we go into the streets of Dublin. And this is amazing. It is like, literally a world I had never seen before.
Yeah, and remember at this time, Steve, all we heard about is the Troubles. All through the 80s, U2 singing about it. We'd seen the clips, we'd seen the videos and on the nightly news and what have you, or the global news that would come through. So this is a way to kind of introduce you back into this daily life of Ireland. The stuff they're going through, essentially a farmer's market for a very poor area of town. All of this going on here in Dublin.
Well, and it's so, because it's like farmer's market in the middle of a city.
Yeah.
And so we have horses and we have people selling things and street musicians singing things. And one of the things to me, and this is that I've never been to Dublin in 1990, but this seems real. This
it feels
doesn't
authentic.
seem it's completely authentic. One of the things that Alan Parker talked a lot about is that there's a lot of Dublin pride, and he wanted to represent it. That this is what our city is. And the two movies that popped into my mind are two that we've done on the show is On the Waterfront and French Connection.
Oh, interesting.
And the reason those pop into my mind is that those are movies, and maybe Rocky as well, which are shot in the real world.
Yeah.
They're not shot in Hollywood trying to create a quote-unquote real world. It's like, no, this is what it really is like.
Yep.
We see Jimmy walking through this market, and we hear him having an interview.
Tell us about the early days, Jimmy. How did it all begin? Well, Terry,
I don't know who the Terry is that he's doing this interview with.
I was always in the music business, but I was more on the sales side in those days.
And what we see is him trying to sell cassettes and T-shirts and not doing very well. And we cut to a wedding band. And we meet our first musician, is Kenneth McCluskey, who plays Derek, and we have Glenn Hansard of the Frames, later to be seen in Once, playing in a crappy wedding band.
Dearest, darling.
Yeah, and Glenn was not... He went to the audition with someone else. It's one of those classic stories where this guy, who's a redheaded guy, wanted to audition for the film. Glenn helps him with the lines, shows up to the audition. The guy, his friend auditions. Glenn's just waiting for him out in the hallway. And then the guys come out. Apparently, the casters come out and go, "You're here to audition." He's like, "No, I'm here with my friend." He's like, No, come in. They want to see him. And that's how he gets the part. He comes in, he's like, I wasn't an actor or anything, but there was something about the authentic way I delivered the lines, just the relaxed way I delivered the lines, that they liked, and they kept calling me back, and I got it, and my friend didn't. That's classic acting Hollywood thing. A lot of people have those experiences, and it's just like,
why don't you and I have those experiences? I've gone to an audition with someone when I wasn't auditioning. No one called me in.
I've never gone to audition with someone who wasn't. If I wasn't auditioning, I refused to do it.
You see, that was your big mistake.
I guess so.
That was your one shot. And we get our first glimpse of Andrew Strong, who's going to be our singer, Deco.
Yeah.
And we hear Destination Anywhere as Jimmy is continuing to walk through the market, and one of the bootleg videos that's being sold is Mississippi Burning.
Yeah.
By the way.
Funny.
Jimmy arrives at the wedding, and we see Imelda there, who's going to be one of the singers eventually. Mm-hmm. And then we see our drunk Andrew Strong, Deco, grab a mic and jump on stage and start singing.
I'm up in the ocean. Tried hard to imagine the way I felt the day I sailed from Westeros to Nova Scotia.
And as soon as you hear his voice, it's like, who is this guy?
No crap. It's such a good voice, man.
And at this moment, the band, which is kind of on a break, they're over talking to Jimmy, saying they want him to manage us. And I love what his qualification is.
Because you know everything about music, Jimmy. You had that Frankie Goes to Hollywood album before anyone had ever heard of them. And you were the first to realize you were shite.
So, two things. One is, I love the word shite.
Yeah, shite is good.
It is not a word that I can really say because I don't come from that culture. I don't have that accent, but I love and shite is different from shit. It is not the same. It has a different meaning.
No.
Because there was so much improv, there are so many more swear words in this movie than were actually in the script.
Oh, wow. Of course.
I mean, because all these Dublin actors, they just kept adding more and more swear words. And Alan Parker, and again, this is where I had to check the facts, said that this became the movie that had the most swear words of any movie in film history.
Wow.
It's not true. I had to look it up. This is the wonderful thing about the internet. It is, in fact, 96th.
Oh, it is 96th amongst... Wow.
Yes.
What's number one?
Wolf of Wall Street.
Yeah, of course it is. Well, it's 3 hours. You know.
Exactly.
It's more Fs per capita. All right, yeah.
What you call yourselves? And. And fucking and.
Well, Ray is thinking of putting an exclamation mark after the second and. He says it'll look deadly on the posters.
And you know, if you've ever been in a band, I'm sure these are conversations that they've had stupid names and trying to be unique in their naming, yet being so terribly bad at it.
And this is the moment they notice Andrew Strong up on the stage drunkenly singing.
Look at that Egypt. That Egypt singing something approximating music.
Well, I hate to correct you, Steve, but what they say is, look at that Egypt. So that's another great word with shite. Egypt. It's Eejiot. It's fantastic.
It's one of my favorite accents is the Dublin accent. And like a lot of, some of you haven't seen this film, there is a bit of that adjustment where you're listening going like, what are they saying? And then you kind of settle into it.
Yep.
The character of Deco was supposed to be kind of a George Michael's type. Super pretty boy, talented, all the girls into him, but a complete jerk. And that is what they were looking for, which is one of the reasons the guy who plays Jimmy, who's really good looking, was in the lead for the part. Yeah. And there was a guy named Robert Strong, who was a well-established singer, middle-aged guy, who was helping Alan Parker out both with the audition process and with arranging musicians, and because they'd have musicians to play with all the people that were auditioning. And there was one day, this is the story, there was one day that Robert couldn't come in. And he said, I'm really sorry, I got a gig or I got a thing, but I'm going to send you my kid. My son, Andrew, is going to come in. And Alan Parker is going, so we're going to get some kid that's going to come in. He comes in, they look at this guy, they're like, oh, what's he going to do? And then he opens his mouth. And everyone went, holy shit.
Yeah.
He was 16 years old.
That's incredible. It's so hard to believe that he's 16 when you watch the movie. But then again, growing up in an area like that, man, you're forced to grow up quick if you have that kind of, I don't know, just that kind of sensibility within you. And he has the vibe of a 20-year-old, 24-year-old, 25-year-old guy who's been working in the docks for a while. You know, he's just got that look to him. Plus the long hair and everything, it just all adds to it. His size, his girth. Yeah. What's
so weird is he's a completely, I would say, a two-faced person, which is most of the time you go like, this guy's 25. This guy can even be 30. And then there's certain other moments where you have a different angle on him. You're like, oh, he is 16.
Yeah, right.
Like he is a complete baby face, a total kid. And because of this, because of who he was, that part changed a lot.
Yeah.
And that's part of why lines are being given to other people. And it's just because they found this guy with this unbelievable voice.
Yeah.
So we're talking about forming this new band, and Jimmy's first rule is Ray, who's the lead singer, he is not going to be in it.
And it's a smart decision.
And it's a smart
super
decision.
Cheesy.
Outside, we're talking about names.
There has to be the something. All the best 60s bands were the somethings.
How about the fucking Egypts?
And now we're going to get into the thing which is the core of the movie. Because they ask, what kind of music are we going to do? And Jimmy says,
Your music should be about where you're from and the sort of people you come from. It should be about struggle and sex. And I don't mean mushy, shite love songs. I mean riding, fucking tongues, scooters, boxers, the works.
Jesus. What kind of music says all that?
Soul.
Soul.
I think just the concept is so... It's one of those things where, like, I remember seeing the trailer and going, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
And yet it's perfect.
Yeah, it's not even offensive because they're doing it out of respect because they know the people who created Soul came from areas just like the areas they came from. And I don't mean Dublin. I mean like hard scrabble, poor areas. Nope. That's at the foundation of Soul. This yearning for connection, for love, for sex, for fame. It's all there in Soul.
And anger too.
And
like
anger,
I want to get
absolutely.
out. You know, it's that there's so much passion in this music. We go to it's like the next day, and we see just sort of scenes as we'll see throughout the film of the streets. And one of the things that I really struck me was we're in a world with a lot of poverty and a lot of difficulty and a lot of suffering, and yet there's so much fun and life that's happening on these streets at the same time with kids playing and people just doing this. Just a very alive world we're in.
Are you Mr. Rabbit? Yeah.
And there is Cole Meany. He's worked with Alan Parker multiple times.
Yeah.
He's always great. Always a fun actor.
Yep.
And the kid has come because he's here about the ad.
What ad? The one in the paper.
And Colm takes the newspaper and says,
You have the wrong rabbit.
slams the door on him.
Can I have my paperback, sir?
Fuck off.
And it ends up that Jimmy has put an ad in the paper that says,
Have you got soul? If so, the world's hardest working band is looking for you. Contact J Rabbit. Rednecks and Southsiders need not apply.
I didn't know about this huge division between North and South Dubliners.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, it is a very... I mean, I guess it's like, you know, Manhattan versus New Jersey or you know, so one of those things where it's like there's people that don't cross over that bridge, cross the river.
Wow. Yeah. Northern Virginia and Southern Virginia has the same thing.
Cole Meany, who is Jimmy's dad, he has a good idea of who the singer should be.
Yeah, himself.
He goes right into an Elvis song.
By the way, I love that they throw this Elvis kind of subplot throughout the movie because, you know, with Soul, there was always that thing that kind of think that Elvis steal soul from black people to become famous with what he did. There's all that kind of stuff, rock and roll rather, from black people. Was it based in that soul? You know, Mom's Mabley and all that. Rock and roll was in essence a term for sex back then. And so there's all that thing. So I like that they kind of just throw this in there because I don't think he did that, but some people do. You know, there's that line in Public Enemy, you know, where he says, in Fight the Power, he says, I never was a fan of Elvis Presley, motherfucking man, John Wayne. And it's like, but I like that they throw this in here because, of course, the older generation would have a reverence for Elvis, right? A certain kind of respect, as their kids would have a reverence for soul because that's more of the guttural stuff, the young stuff when you're desperate for more. And Elvis is more of the more calmer stuff as he gets older, you know, the more of like, I love you, that kind of stuff, you know? So I love that it's running just as a little undercurrent throughout the whole movie.
First of all, you've done Elvis at karaoke, right?
I have dressed up as Elvis for Halloween, yes. I love Biggie.
Yeah, you do a good Elvis, I'm sure. That's right in your groove, I think.
I do a good older Elvis. I don't do a good young Elvis, but I certainly do a good older Elvis. Yes.
I've thought a lot about this Elvis stole his music thing, and my feelings about it have changed over time.
Okay.
But where they start is I think Elvis was influenced.
Yes. Absolutely.
You know, and this is on all musicians, they come from the world they come from, and they love the things that they love. And there's no question that Elvis loved Fats Domino, and he loved all those, you know, African American musicians that were creating R&B and rock and roll at the time. And that, along with his country roots, took him to where it took him musically.
Yeah.
So on the one hand, I like, look, no, he's just doing what all musicians do. But when I think of it today and all the discussions that we're having and all of the people that were overlooked, Elvis is certainly one of the reasons that a whole bunch of people were overlooked.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's
That's
not
fair.
it's not Lou Gehrig's fault that Satchel Paige wasn't allowed to play in his league. Lou Gehrig was just playing baseball. Babe Ruth was just playing baseball.
Yeah.
But there are a whole bunch of ball players that were able to play in the major leagues because there was a whole other group of ball players that were not allowed, who would have kicked their asses, you know? And that is certainly, I think, if everything was fair, Elvis would have been smaller.
Yeah.
You know, that's sort of my opinion on it today.
Pat Boone, even smaller.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's a whole other thing. And now we go to what we talked about before, which is the audition montage.
Yeah, this is great.
Who are your influences?
Barry Manilow.
Who are your influences?
Joan Baez, Joni Mitchell,
Wings. Mike Montana Overdrive.
Spandau Ballet, Soft Cell.
Sinead O'Connor.
And I love the higher, because this is always true in music, is like, this is the form of music that's real and good, and
That's
therefore
always-
these other things are terrible.
There's always gatekeeping, man. There's always gatekeeping.
Well, and it depends on where you put, because like they go, like he rejects Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
Like there's another group of people that would be, Led Zeppelin would reject James Brown, you know?
Maybe, yeah.
Maybe, you know? And it's just funny. I won't go into what all the gags are, but there's some very, very funny gags, including like, you know, there's 3-part harmony. There's a woman singing from Les Mis. There's guys with, you know, screaming electric guitars.
I like the violin guy and the Irish dancing that goes on with the mom.
Too.
And that's not played. I don't think that's played for a joke, because I don't think that kind of Lord of the Dance stuff was big in the early 90s. So I thought that was a really sweet moment into like the culture of that before it kind of blows up, becomes a worldwide thing.
We even have Zydeco Elvis.
Yes,
which Colin is not a fan of.
He wasn't from Memphis, or what did he say? What does he say? New Orleans? He's not from New Orleans.
What do you play?
I used to play football at school.
I mean, what instrument?
I don't.
So what are you doing here?
Well, I saw everybody else lining up, so I thought you were selling drugs.
And now we found our sax player, which is Feline Gromley, who plays Dean.
Yeah.
And he's in the right place because his influences are Clarence Clemens and the guy from Madness.
Yeah.
And he was there playing with the band that people were auditioning with. He didn't come to audition either. For him, it was a gig playing for the auditions, and they let him come in.
Wow. To be part of the film.
To be part of the film.
Wow. You know, that guy goes on to play in the Letterman band for 25 years.
Really?
Yes. He was he played in that session band. So if you watch Letterman, if you have an eagle eye, you can catch him back there playing the sax.
Jimmy is in the tub, once again being interviewed.
In your wildest dreams, Jimmy, did you ever think you'd be this big? To be honest, Terry, I did. Even in the early days.
There's such a sweetness to it, isn't there, Steve? There's such a sweetness to it.
Well, and I'm assuming you've been interviewed in your head.
When I was younger, sure, but I've clearly been interviewed a number of times since, like over the last few years.
Well, you've been actually interviewed for real.
Yeah, I've actually been interviewed. But when I was in my 20s, I wanted to be interviewed for being a famous actor. Yes, that I've done a couple of times, sure.
I've never done it out loud. That's the weird one for me.
You don't want to hear what you have to say. All right, that's fair.
Well, no, I think through. Well, I mean, I'm a person who thinks through everything.
Yes,
and
true.
so it's like I think through how I would explain it. You know, I think it's part of why I'm a teacher. Is like I'm thinking about a thing, and then I think about how I would explain that thing or how I would talk about that thing. I still do that. Even when I did interview myself when I was 18 and I imagined myself on Carson or something, I didn't talk out loud while holding on to a fake microphone, you know?
Well, in this moment, right, doesn't a kid come and knock outside the door?
Yes.
And Jimmy looks through the window. That kid is the kid from the cover of War and Boy from U2 on the album cover. That's the same kid.
The kid that refuses to sing.
Yeah, the kid that refuses to sing in front of everybody because he's embarrassed and he just skateboards away. I thought to myself, that's such a weird scene to throw in the movie. So I did some research on it and found out they did that as kind of an homage to U2, as kind of a wink to U2, to have that kid. And for the Irish audiences who knew who that kid was, because his brother apparently is a famous Irish artist, Gucci or something like that. So that was a nice little, I thought that was a nice little wink and nod if you look for it. Yeah.
We're at a karaoke place talking to our potential drummer. I love that they ask him what his influences are, and he says Animal of the Muppets. And they go off on Depeche Mode and art school music, and then it's like, well, the Beatles went to art school. I love, again, so much of Jimmy's lines are so great, and I'll just play this one here.
It's who it's aimed at. Wankers with funny haircuts and rich dads with fuck all else to do all day but pricking around with synths.
That's just a great line.
Yeah.
And then in walks Imelda, this blonde that we had seen at the wedding, and they ogle her in a ridiculous way. Well, and Jimmy now heads up to a chips truck, and there is Bernie, and he orders some chips and asks her to be a backup singer. It's just, and oh, can you get Imelda Quirk to also be in the band?
And then, not to be outdone, she says, Natalie too. I have my friend Natalie who can sing. Bring her too.
Sure, bring her too.
Don't make sure you don't forget about Imelda. So, understanding the sex sells, especially in rock and roll.
Well, and it immediately sets in Bernie like this feeling of, did he actually want me in the band, or did he just want me because I was the way to get Imelda? Have you had chips with salt and vinegar?
I have in the UK. Yeah, I mean, the thing that surprised me the most about my girlfriend when we went to the UK, Steve Morris, is she had to try fish and chips from 2 or 3 different places that she scoured and investigated and spent hours honing which ones to go to. She had such a, and then my girlfriend has she can be real snooty about food, but for some reason we had to try fish and chips in these 3 places. So I've had the chips with salt and all of that, and out of a truck, and then in a restaurant as well. So yes,
you know that
I enjoyed them.
On some level, you're dating Steve Morris, right?
I don't know if that's true. And please don't put that image in my head. But yeah, okay, fair.
Because I, of course, have my lists. Whenever I'm going somewhere, I have lists of...
Do you really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I just kind of float by the seat of my pants and do a little bit of research while I'm there.
No, I mean, I love food. I mean, I love food, obviously. I love... That's one of the main joys of traveling for me. And so, if I hear... So I use Yelp, and if I hear about a good restaurant in Toledo, I just bookmark it on Yelp. So that if I'm ever in Toledo, there are restaurants I have bookmarked there. And definitely, if I go to a food a place, I want to eat that food, And so, of course, I'd want to find out what is the best fish and chips place in London and go there. That's how
And we went to this place in Trafalgar Square, and she was fucking right. It was great. It was so good.
I remember the first time I had salt and vinegar on chips was I went to the International Boy Scout Jamboree in Canada, outside of Banff, and they said, this is how you do, you put the malt vinegar on and the salt, and I was like, that sounds disgusting. I think this is one of the first instances of me being a foodie, is that I went, but I have to try it, and I tried it, I'm like, this is delicious.
Yeah.
It's completely the opposite of French fries and ketchup, but it's great. Jimmy's walking through a bus wash, and there he finds Deco, our drunk from the band, eating some soup, and he walks up to him and says,
My name's Jimmy Rabbit. I'm putting a band together. I need a singer.
Me?
Yeah, I heard you. You've a rare pair of lungs.
Where'd you hear me singing?
At the Quirk wedding. You got up and sang.
I did?
So he has no memory of singing at all.
By the way, 16. Well, you're allowed to drink, I guess, at a younger age.
Well, this is one of the things that happened is you're hanging out with a young group of musicians.
Yeah.
And they're working together all day. What do you think they're doing all night?
Yeah. Okay.
There's a lot of drinking.
Yeah.
And Andrew Strong, the 16-year-old great singer, he was out there trying to keep up with all the other musicians, and no one was stopping him until finally they said, Alan Parker went, no, this is a real problem. He's not doing well in the movie.
Yeah, it'll affect his voice.
Yeah. And so they finally said the only thing they figured out to do was they moved him into the hotel room with the AD. So Andrew Strong was rooming with the AD to keep him a little bit on the straight and narrow so he could make it through this movie.
That's awesome.
We cut to James Brown, doing I Love You So, old black and white TV. And Jimmy says, this is what you got to do.
Maybe we're a little white for that kind of thing.
We're a bit white? We're a bit white. I love that line.
Do you not get it, lads? The Irish are the blacks of Europe, and Dubliners are the blacks of Ireland, and the Northside Dubliners are the blacks of Dublin.
By the way, in the book, and this was the N-word repeated.
Oh, oof.
Yeah, they did not do that.
Roddy.
Yeah.
So say it once, say it loud. I'm black and I'm proud.
Black and I'm proud.
I almost positive that was in the trailer.
Yeah, I think it was. And
it's such
their reactions are so great.
Yeah, and yet the sax guy mouths it.
Yeah.
And now we're going to meet Joey the Lips. He's riding down a scooter. He crashes the scooter.
That's actually what happened, by the way. He could not... Steve, he could not drive this scooter to save his life.
Well, Johnny Murphy, he didn't have a driver's license. He'd never driven a car. Like, this is really hard for him. He was terrified of the scooter. But he shows up, and we have this conversation, and he's so important to this film. This character,
my God. He is. He is the Greek chorus. He comes in essence. Well, not so a Greek chorus, but he comes in essence. The band would never be formed without him. He is the elder statesman. He is the veteran player you hire or you get onto your team to kind of get everybody together on the same page. And because he's got one more year left in him before he retires. And he's perfect. The way he shoots down all the cracks that Jimmy wants to make at his expense, he just kind of rolls with them, man, because it's like no big deal. And it totally impresses Jimmy.
He is both the musical and the spiritual center of the band.
Yeah.
And his whole attitude, he's got this sort of zen, mellow thing. And he calls everyone brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
The one thing is this, Johnny Murphy is one of the few people who is not a musician. He couldn't play the trumpet. He had to learn a little bit about how to look like he could play the trumpet.
Yeah.
And Jimmy's first reaction is he says, "You're the same age as me da."
But I'm 16 years younger than B.B. King.
You've heard of B.B. King?
I jammed with him, man.
Piss off.
And this is going to set up one of the main things is he what he's saying the truth?
Yeah.
Can we buy that he really is jammed with all these people that he says he has?
And once again, Steve, look, you're the director. You've written screenplays. But from the outside, I've never written one in my life, but from the outside, this is such a brilliant device to use to add this mystery to this, or mystery component to this overall storyline that's happening in the film, right? Is he telling the truth? Is he not telling the truth? And it comes in at a perfect time when we've got an idea what's happening, and all of a sudden this person shows up, almost like a mystical person shows up, and do they really have a connection to God or do they not? And so through the whole movie, you're wondering, is he what he says he is? So it's a nice little element of mystery to throw in to the film overall.
I'm glad you brought it up because, one of my basic rules of screenwriting or directing is when faced with two choices, make the most dramatic one. And that's not always true, but it's usually true. And if you go like, well, okay, I have this guy show up, and it can either be that everybody just believes him.
Yeah.
Yes, you did all this. Or that some or all the people don't believe them.
Yeah.
And just knowing nothing else about the movie, about the character, about the structure, which of those two choices is more dramatic?
It's more active that they don't believe him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If everyone believes him, it is passive. Then we just got information. Here is a guy who played with Wilson Pickett and Sam Cooke and Stevie Wonder, whatever.
Right.
If you don't believe him, then it is a strain that can be active throughout the movie, and we can address it and have conflict over it. And of course, that's what we're always trying to create. So it's so counterintuitive for young screenwriters because they think, oh, I just need to get the information out. He is an experienced musician. It's like that's not the job.
Yeah.
The job is to get the conflict out.
Yeah.
Two stories. One is Johnny Murphy was totally drinking and partying with all the kids. He was right there with them. He's a well-known theater actor. In fact, he did Godot for decades. Loved Beckett. Here's a quick story that Alan Parker told. I don't know how true this is, but apparently years after the movie, he's just lined up in a bank to withdraw some money or something, and the bank is robbed, and a bunch of guys come in with masks and shotguns and, rob the bank, and he's absolutely terrified. And as the crooks are leaving, one of them stops and recognizes him, and not only goes, "You're Joey the Lips," but quotes the film before running out.
And I saw that in the one of the pieces on the DVD, and shakes his hand, like makes him shake his hand, which is an even more like, oh my God, please. That's brilliant.
It's such a weird thing because we've heard these stories before. Is yes, they're actors who are movie stars, and everywhere they go, or they're recognized. But they're also actors who had 2 lines in a really famous thing. And for the rest of, they did 1 day of work on a movie set, and for the rest of their lives, people will recognize them for that thing.
Yeah.
Why would you want to join us?
The Lord sent me. The Lord blows my trumpet.
We go to him playing Moon River. This is the first scene ever shot in the film.
Wait. Don't gloss over a great joke.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I know. With Cole Meany goes, when he says to him, he says, "The Lord sent him on a Suzuki?" That is such a great joke. Anyway, all right.
I believe it's on a fucking
Suzuki.
Yeah. And the looks from we're with some of the band members, and the looks from the guys when he plays Moon River are just like, oh, this guy's good. Yeah. They don't particularly like Moon River, but this guy can play.
See, the Lord told me the Irish brothers needed some soul. He said the Irish brothers wouldn't be shooting the arses off each other if they had soul.
Let me ask you this question.
Yeah.
It's proven at the end of the film that Joey did know Wilson Pickett. Right?
Yes.
Is everything Joey says true?
Doesn't have to be. Doesn't have to be, nor does it need to be. But this thing is true. And like all great musicians...
Which thing?
The Wilson Pickett thing
yes.
is true. But like all great musicians and all great veterans of a thing you want to get into or you want to know about, stories abound, legends abound, and that's part of the joy of having something like that or someone like that in your life. And they're great. They're great.
Totally. Well, and the thing I think is that you take the famous people, there are actually far more people that go into the periphery, into the orbit of famous people than you would think. And so there are tons and tons of people who might have been a session musician on this thing or showed up at Graceland at that thing. And there is truth there, but actually, Elvis doesn't remember them. You know what I mean? Because there's thousands of people that showed up at Graceland at one time or another. Now, if the story that he's going to tell about Elvis later on actually happened, maybe Elvis would remember that. We find out about Stephen Clifford, who's a medical student who's going to be in the band.
Places we be playing could be useful to have someone that can bandage heads.
And one thing we should talk about is one of the places we start to rehearse is at Joey's mom's place.
Yeah.
She is an amazing character.
Yeah, fantastic character.
Just her look, her strangeness, her playing the violin. And she answers the door and sends Imelda, Bernie, and Natalie off to go find them. And we go inside and we're talking about what's the band going to be called. And they say, and Jimmy says, Joey knows, tell them. And they do in the most theatrical way.
We are.
And then we cut away to the girls having to climb over this hedge. And then we cut back in. Joey's never said it. And now they react to
The commitments.
That's interesting, right? What an interesting choice, Steve, to cut away before he says it. And then have the after effect of him saying it.
It is. It's a totally interesting choice. And I think the way it's structured, because he repeats "we are," I think that's in the script. I don't think that happened in it could have. That's the kind of thing you could have happened in post. But I think it was structured in the script to be that way. Yeah. And they look over as they're talking about the commitments and see the girls coming their way.
Lads, you're looking at the commitment.
Brilliant management, Brother Rabbit.
I love this moment because you could ding this movie, right? He's a young man. Angelique Ball at this time is absolutely gorgeous. She's beautiful. So the guys, of course, would fall all over themselves. But Bernie's the one that says, right? What you're looking at for whatever it is, or Maria says it, or Natalie says it. Whichever one of the three, and I know it's not Imelda, but one of the two says it. And it just smacks them right back down like they're little kids. And it's incredible to see their faces immediately revert to being like 10-year-old kids who got caught with the hands in the cookie jar. I love it. And that tells you right there those women are not women to be fucked with. And I love that.
Well, this is the question I asked Karen. I said, because we were watching, because there's a lot of ogling, of not only ogling of the women, but structuring it. Their job is to be sexy on stage. And I said to Karen, I said, well, are the characters sexist or is the movie sexist? Yeah. And she said, I don't know. We were halfway through the film when I asked her this question. She said, I don't know. Let me think about that. And I think by the time we got to the end, the movie is not sexist at all.
No.
I think it is showing this sexist part of the music business and of our characters.
Right.
But I think the movie is incredibly respectful to Imelda, Bernie, and Natalie, you know?
Well, and this is the thing that we have to transition into as we move into new filmmaking that respects women, respects their contribution. We also can't walk away from the fact that there are characters or people or guys who will ogle a woman because she's beautiful, because she's attractive, because she's sexy. That's part of it. And there are some women that find power in that, right? And there's later on in the film, Bernie says that. I thought for sure you'd want to be, or Natalie says that you'd want it, a situation where they don't ogle you, right? But there's that kind of thing. So there's no hard and fast rule. And there are multiple shades of gray within that. I just think now as we move forward, we have to be respectful of that and portray the women in a strong way, but also multiple shades of that. And I think it's important. So as we go back in time and ding certain movies, we also have to understand, like, you have to understand the context, right? In this context, they're not ogling her to try to assault her sexually. They're ogling her because she's beautiful and she's sexy. But when they get smacked down, they get smacked down. And that's that, you know? And so it's these characters that are being, and they come from a hard scrabble, you know, life's, you know, guys are going to be like that. So we got to portray their authenticity. And just like the women from that area too, they got to be hard as nails too and tough as nails and smack back people who try to come at them in a way that's inappropriate. So it's like, these are all just tough people living in a hard scrabble life. And I think that has to be part of the context of when you look at things like this.
Well, what I would say, and again, we're continuing to reevaluate how we feel about these things, but what I would say is that, look, sex is real. People are attracted to each other. They do notice each other's bodies. They do objectify each other. In fact, you know, as we look at what are the big parts of life, sex and attraction and lust and all that, that's a big part of humans. And so if we're going to do art, we can't just ignore this huge slice of who we are and how we feel and, you know, why we are attracted to people. It's in there.
What's important is putting the context in correctly.
Yeah.
That's what's important.
Well, and then we go like, how do I be a better person?
Yes,
you know, like this exists, but how do we get better?
Yep.
The song is Destination Anywhere, another great song. The woman singing it is the number 4 person who was almost one of the 3 girls.
Wow, really?
Yeah. And Alan loved her voice, and so he gave her this song.
Nice.
Yeah, that's what I really like about this film, is that the behind-the-scenes stuff is cool, too.
Yeah.
You know? It reflects what the philosophy of the movie is.
Yeah.
And this is this kind of montage where they're kind of getting to know each other as a band. We haven't played yet.
Listen, from now on, I don't want you listening to Guns N' Roses and the Soup Dragons. I want you on a strict diet of soul. James Brown for the growls, Otis Redding for the moans, Smokey Robinson for the whines, and Aretha for the whole lot put together.
Jimmy says soul is sex.
George, you bastard.
I didn't say that. I said the rhythm of soul is the rhythm of riding.
It's all funny stuff. And this is the first time where we really get Deco being a jerk to the women.
Yeah.
Well, and this is to your point before. It's like he comes at the women and they destroy him.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Soul is the rhythm of sex, and it's the rhythm of the factory too. The working man's rhythm. Sex in the factory.
Not in the factory I'm in. There isn't much rhythm in gutting fish.
And I love the way he talks about soul. I love, because, by the way, spoiler alert, I love this music.
Yeah.
Like, I listened to James Brown and Otis Redding. That was what I listened to growing up. I still love that music. And I had an interesting experience. I think we've talked about, when we did Hard Day's Night, we talked about this amazing book on the Beatles. And one of the things I did as I was listening to this huge book on the Beatles is they discovered all these musicians that they loved. Little Richard, Sam Cooke, Ray Charles, Fats Domino. And what I did as I was listening to this book was I made like a playlist of all the songs that they were talking about. And as I listed them, I had this epiphany because there's so much we're in the world of like EDM and electronic music, which is not my thing. And the thing that I realized listening to all this music, which is sort of the precursor to the soul that we're talking about in this film, is that you could hear the sweat.
Yeah.
You could hear the live band in the club and people dancing, and that it was real and all that emotion is coming through. And I'm not saying there aren't super talented people that make EDM and make all sorts of different kinds of music that's more, but you don't hear that.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the thing that I feel watching this movie is that you feel the people, you feel the human emotion coming throughout this movie when they play music.
Yeah, agreed.
We got to go get some equipment. So we go to this really weird space where there are dogs with muzzles and talking about feeding them rabbits. And here we make the deal to get the amps and the drums and the, all the stuff that they need to go. And it makes the deal of, I can't pay you now, but I'll pay you soon. As soon as we're making some money, I'll pay you. Right. It reminded me of Ray Charles and the Blues Brothers.
We'll take these axes.
Naturally. And as usual, I got to take an IOU.
Though that was a little less dangerous than this guy.
I don't know. Ray pulled a gun on him.
That's true. He shot the kid. I mean, he shot the wall near the kid. Yeah.
And now we go into their practicing montage, which is Nowhere to Run. The girls are practicing dance moves. The sax guy is repeating,
I'm black and I'm proud.
The drummer is practicing with cans and whatever he can find. The lead singer is on the bus singing at some little girls who look very disturbed. And we go into a pool hall, which is going to be our rehearsal space. The guy that is showing them the pool hall is the guy that was going to play Jimmy when Jimmy was going to play Deco.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That guy with the long hair.
Yep.
How interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Wow.
And I love that Alan Parker gave him that part. Like, I'm really sorry we're not giving this other thing, but you can do this.
Yep.
Mustang Sally, brothers and sisters, and remember, Rome wasn't built in a day.
Dublin was. In an hour.
And right when they start, man, Andrew Strong's voice is just...
so good.
Mustang Sally! Yes, you better slow the Mustang down.
And you see Joey looks over of like, oh, because that's the first time he's hearing him. And one of the things they did so well, and this is part of why Alan Parker wanted real musicians, is they do such a good job of showing the progression of this band.
Yeah.
Because there are things about this Mustang Sally that sound good, and there are things that aren't quite working, and they're not quite together, and they don't have it all. And they're, singing, maybe they're a little flat. He argues with them about you can't use your accents when you're singing.
Royd, Sally, Royd. It's not Royd, Sally, Royd.
It's later on, they're watching Deco eat.
Look at him. He eats like a pig. He's such a prick. Hasn't got the voice of a prick, though. Joey says it belongs to God.
God should ask for a bite.
Which, of course, sets up this running rivalry between the two guys, the drummer and the lead singer, which a lot of bands encounter, don't they? Because, I mean, the drums kind of set the rhythm, and the lead singer gets upset if the drummer goes too fast or too slow. It could be undercutting one, so it's always that kind of thing.
Well, and again, it's funny you brought up this question about screenwriting, is that a poor screenplay, a not good version of this is we'd just be watching the band get better.
Right.
But what's actually happening, we are watching the band get better, but we're also planting the seeds for all the conflicts that are going to destroy the band. Because it's like, this might be the most fun you can have in a tragedy. You know what I mean? Because this is all heading towards disaster.
Yeah.
And yet it's really an enjoyable journey to disaster.
Are you doing what I told you? Are you thinking of that reed as a woman's nipple?
I am, yeah.
And I love that he asks, who is she? And he's like, oh, she lives across the street from me, but I'm embarrassed because she's still in school. And this is like the amazing Zen master advice.
Maybe you should set your sights a little higher. My trumpet was always Gina Lola Brigida.
And what's funny about the scene, of course, is that the sax player is a great musician. Joey can't play the trumpet.
Right, but he's schooling him.
Yeah.
We could try Kim Basinger.
And it's great because Joey doesn't know who Kim Basinger is. And the sax player doesn't know who Gina Lollobrigida is.
That's
so
great.
it's a nice little kind of generational thing too. And of course, this is Kim Basinger. 91 is like peak Kim Basinger in terms of
totally,
work, notoriety, sexiness, all of it. It's peak Kim Basinger.
Totally. And now we're back with them doing Mustang Sally again, and they sound better. One of the interesting things, by the way, it's come up before, is that the normal way you shoot something is you shoot the wide shot first. You always shoot a master first when you're filming, and you do this for several reasons. The first is that you want everyone, cast, crew, and all the actors to see and understand the whole scene. Whereas if I just shoot your close-up first, well, I don't really know what I'm doing and where I'm going on my side of the scene. Therefore, you don't really know where to look in your close-up because we haven't done the whole thing, Right. And the other reason is that you want to set lighting. You want to see what the whole scene looks like in the master so that when you go into the close-up, you can match the lighting in the close-up to what the master is. If you shoot the close-up first, well, I don't know what the other side of the room looks like, and it's going to be really hard to keep everything the same. They did this the opposite direction. And the reason that they did close-ups first, which you rarely do, is that they actually were doing these performances live. These are mostly their live singing voices. Because Alan Parker didn't believe that you could match great live performance by lip-syncing a studio version of the song.
Did he not watch La Bamba? Because Richie Valens, Lou Diamond Films literally does that through the whole movie.
Well, that's the way most movies go.
Yeah.
But I will say, I like La Bamba and I like his performance. It doesn't feel like The Commitments.
No, you're right. So maybe for this particular movie, what he wanted to accomplish, that's the way to go. Well, it certainly worked out.
And so this is how they did it, is that most of the instruments are pre-recorded and the voices are live. And so the question is how you do it. And I just love the technology. They have such a slick technological way of doing this. And it relates to, do you know how your noise canceling headphones work?
I do not. I just know that they do.
So picture in your mind a sound wave. And so you have a line and I'm gesturing so everyone can see this. You have a wave going up and down across the line, right? So if I take a wave, the exact same sound wave, and I flip it upside down, so that I have the wave like this, and then I have the other wave that's the opposite. So when the wave was going down, I have a wave going up. And I play those together, you hear silence. One wave cancels out the other wave.
Wow.
So what's happening in your noise-canceling headphones is there's a little microphone that's hearing the world around it. And what it is doing is playing the world around it into your ears, flipped, so that you're actually hearing two sounds, and each sound is canceling each other out. Wow. That is how they played this music live. They played music out of the speakers, out of phase, so that they could then cancel out all the other sound and have the vocals isolated.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing?
That's great.
I mean, this is not a high-tech movie, but that is a really brilliant solution to a very complicated problem on the set.
That was a load of shite.
It was woeful. But that boy can sing. And it was a start. I believe in starts. Once you have the start, the rest is inevitable.
Again, he's like the great Zen master.
Yep. Yeah, because I think Jimmy would have driven this band into the ground.
Yep.
By overworking them, over-rehearsing them, because he's temperamental himself, he's emotional himself. He's the wrong guide for this band.
Well, and I think, for lack of a better term, it's like mom and dad,
Yeah.
You got the harsh one who's passionate and intense, and you got the one who's loving and supportive of everybody.
Yeah.
We have a little scene collecting some unemployment.
Hey, Jimmy! It feels much better being an unemployed musician than an unemployed pipe fitter.
Which I think is, but I actually think this line is key to the movie, because what we're going to get to in the end, and what Joey says in the end, is that he gave them hope.
Yeah.
That's what he's giving them, is that moment of, I'm not an unemployed pipe fitter, I'm an unemployed musician, has changed Dean forever. Even though he's still unemployed either way.
It's like life. If you reframe your approach, your perspective, you'd be surprised how differently everything looks just by reframing it in your own mind. And the scene feels very similar to the Full Monty. Remember when they were doing the dance when they're in line at the dole as well? It's that kind of like the formation of this. Both movies, that scene occurs when they're forming the group.
It's so funny that there's just this whole run of films that are these Irish comedic dramas, working class, that are great. Yeah. We're with Joey's mom. The band is trying to figure out, did he really do this stuff?
I love it.
And she goes, yeah, of course he did. He sent me postcards from everywhere he went.
I'll tell you a secret about my Joey that no one else knows. He sent me a postcard in every place he went.
And they even see it says Joey F on the back of an album. Like, well, that could be anybody.
Once again, that mystery, right?
Yep.
That mystery of it all. It's great.
We're back in Dublin, and we get to Jimmy's walking up to, a tall building, like a housing project. And we get to, again, it's a classic joke. There's a horse waiting for the elevator. He says, you're not taking that into the lift.
We have to. The stairs will kill him.
That's just a good joke. It's a very well-structured joke.
Yep.
And we find Bernie with the baby. Her mom not only has many, many kids, including babies, but she's got another on the way, and that Bernie is the one bringing in the money. And so she's missing rehearsals.
You're not dumping me, Jimmy. I put in the other two, or was that the reason why you fucking asked me?
What are you talking about? You got the best voice of the three of you.
Do you think Jimmy thinks she's got the best voice?
Yes. I do think Jimmy thinks she's got the best voice, but in his mind, he doesn't see her as, the same ways he sees Imelda, and to a lesser extent, Natalie.
Look, Jimmy, I catch up. I need this band more than any of us. I need something to look forward to.
Once again, the idea of hope, right?
Hope.
Like you said, yeah.
We're in church. He's with the organist who's playing, doing Whiter Shade of Pale.
Yeah.
And what the guy playing the organ said is that it was really hard to talk and play. It's easy to sing and play because they're sung to the music.
Right.
But when you're doing a scene with someone, well, the rhythm of the dialogue has nothing to do with the rhythm of the music, and it was really hard for him to do it.
One of 16 vestal virgins leaving for the coast. What's that mean?
And we hear the priest say,
I never understood that either. It's a very peculiar lyric.
Which I love.
Yeah.
And this is where we find out we got a gig. We're going to have a gig at the community hall at the church.
To stop people using heroin?
Just get to stop people using heroin. And now we're into Too Many Fish in the Sea, which is the Marvelettes. I mean, every song is a great song.
Look here, girls. Take this advice and remember always in life. Into each heart, some cheers must fall. Though you love and lose, you must stand tall.
And Deco says, well, what am I supposed to do? And this is another one of our conflicts. He doesn't like it when the commitment-ettes are singing lead.
Oh, yeah. No, he doesn't like being pushed aside for them. Yeah.
Our sax guy, Dean, goes out to grab a smoke, and there he finds Joey the Lips using his lips with Natalie.
You fairly ruffled my savoir-faire there, Dean, my man.
These are a bunch of musical nerds coming together, and clearly this one doesn't have any understanding of how to play wingman in this situation. You certainly just, if soon as you stumble upon it, you quietly move back and then later go like, nice.
Well, but wait, hold on. I don't think he wants to be wingman at all. I think he thinks this is gross because this is an old guy.
Fair enough. He runs into you're right. He runs into the band room a few seconds later.
Never believe what I just seen. Joey and Natalie getting it off on the stairs. I'm telling the truth.
Well, because remember, they were ogling these girls before. All of our young musicians. And this is the thing, too. I'm not going to say that Joey the Lips is disreputable because of this, but I think this is part of why he's in the band.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
I mean, and is
he's
it okay?
He's an older guy, too. These girls are what, in their early 20s?
Early 20s, and he's in his late 40s, early 50s.
Yeah.
He takes down the commitment-ettes one by one, to be clear.
Yeah, so you youngins, watch out for the old guys.
But he's old and he's ugly.
But you're young and you're uglier.
Joey's not married, so fair fucks to him.
You're all so fucking stupid. Can't you see that Natalie got off with him?
Then she's a slut.
And he's on top of the piano, and they push him off the piano. We're setting up for the gig. We have these twins who talk together in every scene.
Yeah,
it's really fun.
Yeah. Mika Wallace wants to see you. He's in the pub.
Mika Wallace?
I heard him to do the door. Security.
You're mad, Jimmy. He's a savage.
And Jimmy says, I know, but he's our savage. And we go and meet Dave Finnegan, Mika Wallace. he is banging the mic into his head. It's just totally insane. Goes into I Don't Like Mondays.
The Boomtown Rats, I love it.
He's such a great character. Just violent, crazy. And this is how he got into the movie. Is as we were going around Dublin, they were going to all these clubs. They went to a punk club and they saw him. He's the lead singer of a punk band. And Alan Parker saw him stick the microphone in his mouth and sing with the microphone in his mouth. And he went, I got to bring this guy in.
Yeah.
I know you watched some of the stuff on the DVD. Did you see his audition?
No, I didn't watch his audition. Is that
it's in
on there?
it's on one of the behind the scenes or something. There's a lot of stuff on that on the Blu-ray. Alan Parker's just talking to him, and they get into an argument.
Oh wow!
And Alan Parker insults him.
I mean, you got the same kind of haircut as Sinead O'Connor, nearly.
Don't get smart now, you know.
What you gonna do if I get smart?
Keep pushing on, break your bleeding neck, right?
You do what? You and who's on it?
My enemy.
And they literally just like, oh my god! At any second they're gonna fight, and that's how he casts him in the movie.
I just want to see if it's believable.
Like it's not fake scary. It's like he could at any moment beat up Alan Parker. Yeah.
You directors fucking with people. You directors.
I don't know that I've ever pulled that particular move. We're looking out of the audience. They're all in their suits. They're not happy to all be in the suits. The girls have some beautiful dresses. Mika is at the door being an aggressive door guy.
Yeah.
Our bass player is nauseous and Joey settles him down. And then Jimmy goes out and introduces them.
Will you please put your working class hands together for the Saviors of Soul, the hardest working band in the world. Yes, 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 the Commitment.
Can't get the curtain open.
The other way, Brother Robert.
Jimmy goes to the soundboard. The bass players, you could see the vomit going into his mouth.
Yeah, yeah.
And then they just sit there. They don't know what to do.
Brother Billy, when you're ready.
And they go into Mr. Pitiful.
They call me Mr. Pitiful. Baby, that's my name.
I love that song.
Great song. Another Otis Redding song. Mm-hmm. The Commitment-ettes are not quite together. Deco sounds great. They do a perfect job of having them be good, but not that good.
Right.
And
clumsy.
And clumsy because Deco pushes the girls. and Deco also says, calls them his group. And the drummer doesn't like that. And Joey tells him he's got to apologize to the girls. And they're swearing at each other. And then they try to get it back together and get back into the song. Next song we sing, Natalie is singing lead. She's got a great voice.
Yeah, she does. Marie Doyle Kennedy. I mean, she was already in a band before the film when she auditioned for the film. So I think it's called the Black Velvet Band. And she's released numerous albums since. Some solo, some with a group. Yeah, she's an incredible singer.
The twins go to get Cole Meany, who's at a pub. The pub, by the way, you'll notice it's got all these glass, like this weird. Is that it was a club that was built when men and women couldn't be in the club together legally. Wow. So Colm is on the men's side, and the twins say, no, he's really, the band is really good, and we're back at the concert, and the show is going great. And in comes Cole Meany standing next to Jimmy and starts dancing, and there's some looks there, and we have our lead singer who's picked up the mic stand. This looks really dangerous, and he slams it into the guitar. There's a huge explosion. Everything goes out, and the audience wants more.
Right. That's rock and roll, son.
That's rock and roll.
Soul. Have you ever heard of this? Because he becomes electrified, and the guitar player does, and you're not supposed to touch someone once they're electrified, that you could get yourself electrified as well.
Yeah.
I've never known until the movie. I didn't know this was a real thing.
Oh yeah, we're not the best conductors in the world, but we definitely can conduct electricity. Well, here's the experience you've had that someone goes to shake your hand on a dry, cold day, and you get a shock. Yeah. That is them conducting electricity through your bodies.
I've been shocked before by electricity. I put my finger in a socket one time, and it was fuck you. It's so fast, Steve, and you literally are just frozen. It's like what they show you in those comic book cartoons.
Oh,
You're literally just frozen.
No, it's scary. It's super scary. Yeah. I mean, and there are people who like there are those things you can hold on to and they make your muscles all. And people, let's do this. I'm like, no, it's no fun at all.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Cut to the hospital where we have a funny conversation about how musicians died.
We need a year's rehearsal.
What? That's
face it, Jimmy. We're all over the place.
It was raw, sure. But there was moments there where you were cooking.
Which is exactly right, is they are all over the place, and they do have something. And already they're kind of going, maybe we should just pack this thing in.
We just want to be in the band in the first place.
And they don't have an answer. And he says,
You want to be different, isn't that it? You want to stand out from the rest of the tossers. You want to get up and shout, I'm Outspan fucking Foster, and I'm Derek fucking Scully, and I'm not a tosser. Isn't that it?
That's it, Jimmy.
Well, don't forget it. Unless you want to spend the rest of your life wrapping frozen fucking chickens.
the thing about Jimmy as a character is that he knows what he wants. You know, that's why he's doing all these interviews. He has an image of who he's supposed to be, and he's trying to be that. And because he knows that, he knows something about what's inside the hearts of these musicians that he's brought together.
Yeah.
Tell me, Jimmy, did you ever have any doubts that things wouldn't turn out as you planned? Well, I'd be telling fibs if I didn't, Terry. And there was that old rock and roll demon, SEX. Sex, Jimmy?
And a kid pops up.
Sex? Fuck off. I'm being interviewed.
Joey puts on a record.
Oh, my God.
His shirt is off. The music is Shaft. And his spiel, I don't know what we call it, is so...
His seduction is what I would call it.
Yeah, his seduction is just... Yeah, I'll just play it.
Come on, baby. Don't get hung up on anything. You know, I want to be your everything. Come on, baby. Come see what I've got for you.
And of course, as he moves into someone on the bed, which we assume is going to be Natalie, the camera moves and we see it's Bernie.
Will you stop talking shite, Joey?
And then we hear, Shaft!
Love it.
Our girls are together and they're talking about this idea that guys are now fantasizing about them, that they're on stage essentially as sex objects. And what does that feel like? And even someone comes up and asks them where they're going to play next. And they say, up to our manager. And the last thing they say is,
I feel like Madonna.
and again, it's changing how they see themselves.
Yes.
You know? Yes. Yeah. So even though they're not going to be a success as the Commitments, they've changed because of this experience. We're in another rehearsal. There's a baby there. This obviously they have twins for this. The baby really was screaming and crying throughout. They needed the baby screaming and crying throughout, but it makes it really, really hard to shoot a movie. And honestly, it's really hard on a baby. Again, we have more conflict with the drummer because Deco was playing for the drums.
Fucking hell, it doesn't take long to get the hang of it, does it? It takes control and skill. So you're fucked for starters.
We hear that Wilson Pickett is coming to Dublin. This becomes an important plot point. And Imelda tells Jimmy that she can't make the gig.
What?
I'm going on my holidays with Greg and the family. We've got this caravan in the Isle of Man.
A caravan? Jeez, we're just getting things going. You're pissing off to some tossing camping site.
Ah, shite, Jimmy. You're making me feel worse than I already do.
And here's the truth of the matter. Like, when you watch this scene, Imelda's absolutely right. But producers and band managers, their job is to not give a shit about your schedule because they got to hit their things. They got to get their stuff done. And that's the unfortunate situation at times in creative endeavors. And you have to make your own decision about whether you want to allow that to affect you or not.
Well, and I would just say they're both right. I mean, like,
yes, right.
You know, the play is going up this night.
Yeah.
And suddenly you say, hey, I can't make the play. It's like, well, you agreed to join the band.
Right.
Well, and this is, you know, how often have you had to choose between your personal life and your professional life? All the time. And you make that choice as best you can.
Yep.
And I think particularly when you're younger, you know, and you're not married and you don't have kids and, you know, it's like, well, I'll just go do whatever. You know, sure, I'll do 10 gigs in a row and stay up all night and because that's the life, you know? Yeah. We start with a shot of the Pope and pan up to Elvis. And this, by the way, was shot in a studio and added later. It was an idea Alan Parker had, like after they had wrapped photography of just this shot, of just this one shot of the pictures. And now we hear a story of Joey telling about his experience at Graceland to Colm, who's just waiting, just on his every word,
transfixed.
So, get out! I said get out! So what did Elvis say, Joey?
Yeah, listen to this.
This bit's brilliant.
And he handed her back to me and he said, Joey the Lips, please forgive my daddy.
And maybe this story is true, and maybe this story is not true. And I love at the end that Colmass really, really seriously.
Now, with all the time that you were in Graceland, did you ever see Elvis messing around with drugs?
No, brother.
I knew it.
I love it. I love it. Great little run again. Once again, great little subplot running all through the film. This Elvis thing.
Well, and what's great about it is that it confirms something that was important to Cole Meany's view of the universe.
Oh yeah,
because Elvis, he put Elvis on a wall next to the Pope. That's how important. And of course, there's two things in this line that I like. One is that it's possible that Joey was never at Graceland.
Mm-hmm.
It's also possible and maybe likely that if he was at Graceland, he did see Elvis messing around with drugs, and he's lying to Cole Meany to preserve Cole Meany's view of Elvis.
Yes, that I think is true. I also think the other story could have absolutely happened, right? Just a quick thing. Listen, I met John Woo and he thanked me for doing ADR work on Wind Talkers. He wouldn't remember me from Adam now, but I had that moment.
Right.
And so it's like, you can say, oh, I had that moment. But like Elvis met thousands and thousands of people all the time. So it's like, you know, you take away that moment like, oh, I got to meet Elvis. But he's like, oh, just another person.
I went to the Amblin buildings and met Steven Spielberg and ran camera while we interviewed him.
That's awesome.
He would never remember me.
Right.
There's no reason why he would ever remember me.
Right. But you have that moment.
Yeah. Yeah, it was great. It was like literally felt like meeting the president. Like we had an assistant come in. We're in this room and the assistant came in and said, Stephen will be coming in about 15 minutes. He's going to look at the shot and he has to make sure it's acceptable. If he asks you to change the shot, you'll have to change the shot. He'll do 3 takes on this thing that he was recording. And after that, and please don't ask him any questions about his film or anything that he's working on. He'll be happy to greet you and say hello and shake your hand, but that's it. And we go, okay. And he came in and he was warm and charming and like the coolest thing. So what it actually was he was recording a tribute to Milos Forman because Milos Forman was getting some kind of award and Spielberg couldn't be there. So it was one of those, remote things. He did, and he had a teleprompter and he did it once. He did okay. He did it a second time, and he said, that one's no good. And he did it a second time. He did better. And then he did it a third time, and he rearranged a bunch of the words and made it more casual and natural.
Wow.
And I was like, damn, that was really good. And he said, and he finished the thing, and he looked at us, and he went, that's the one. That's your take. All right, I got to go. And it was just, it's totally small. But hearing Steven Spielberg say, that's the one, that's your take. Yeah. I heard him on the set. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was like, that's how he sounds on the set. It was really cool. Anyway, but we digress. Imelda's getting on the boat to go with her family, and they're about to leave, and she says, I can't go.
It's that group. It's that fucking group.
Yeah. We're at a club, and the bartender's like, that's a big group. And in comes Imelda, soaking wet, and it's like, oh, great, she's going to be here. We go to the show. They're doing Take Me to the River. Now they're sounding really good.
Won't you tell me I love to stay? Take me to the river.
And the crowd gets into it. The horns sound great. It's all working really, really well. The other thing that's happening, I know you've experienced this too, is like you're doing a play and you're first trying to just get it, and then you go off book and then it becomes terrible again. And then it starts to get better. And then you go into tech and it becomes terrible again. And then you, have your dress rehearsal, first preview, and it's starting to come together. There's this moment that happens in a good play where all the pieces are there. You're not stressed about lines. You're not stressed about technical stuff. And you start to look around and have fun.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's this scene. Is they're past the hump of being able to play together, and now they're actually starting to enjoy it. And then the drummer knocks over his drums, and Deco calls him a fucking idiot, and they argue. And Joey again settles him down. And they finish their song, and there's a huge reaction in the crowd, and they just take it in. And things are this is really going to work. It's going to happen. And after their dinner and they start off celebrating, and then Deco comes up and sings at Imelda, and immediately conflict starts again. We talk about Joey, who's having sex with everybody. Jimmy gets angry. He says,
Sex, it fucks up everything.
You told us Soul was sex.
Look, let's keep relations on a professional basis.
How are we professional if we've never been paid?
I'm working I'm fucking working
And there's the shot. Yeah.
He exits. He's outside calling a cab, and up comes Natalie. I think this is a great scene.
Oh, yeah.
She asks to share a taxi home, which is really forward. It's very clear. And his response is,
For fuck's sake, Natalie, how can you ask me that after what I just said in there?
If you weren't the manager, would you?
But I what?
Take me home.
But I am the manager.
Interesting moment, right? I mean, because we just saw what's his face with Bernie. So what happened with him and Natalie? Did he just go, I'm cool? Like, did he just have sex with her and then that was it? Like, is he just going through these women as a kind of like, conquest type situation? And so, is Natalie one of those women that kind of got a little too into the situation? Then when he rejected her or stopped having sex with her, she was hurt by it. So she's reaching out to him to try to connect with him.
Well, I think what's so two things. One is on the Joey front. I think what's interesting is that when Natalie is hooking up with Joey, the other girls are defending her, saying it's not your business. She can do what she, she's a grown woman. And then when we see that it's Bernie, our sense is, oh, what's going on here? But we don't see that there's conflict yet.
Right.
What we're going to see next is that, in fact, Joey is a central conflict for the three women.
Yes.
That is what's actually, and then on the Jimmy thing, there's a moment where Natalie says, "Hey, I think Jimmy's cute," and they make a gesture of maybe Jimmy is gay.
Right.
I think that's so this moment here could either be that Jimmy is 100% committed to being the manager.
Yes.
And that is why he's not going to do anything with Natalie.
Yeah.
And the other possibility is that he's gay.
Right.
And that's why he's not going to do anything with Natalie. Right. And we're going to get to it at the end. There's another mention of Natalie at the end where it's very ambiguous what he's talking about.
Right.
We're at a photo shoot.
Look, do you not think it's better to have the band on Butt Bridge with the customs house in the background?
I'm not after a bleeding postcard. I'm after urban decay.
Some rockers come up. We hear them sing Fame, which is, obviously Alan Parker directed that. Up comes the van with the drummer who says, I'm leaving the band. It's Deco. I hate him.
I can't do it.
He's a prick. It's no use, Jimmy, lending violence. I'm going to have to hit him. And I'm on probation,
Probation?
Yeah.
What for?
For hitting a prick just like him.
And at first, Jimmy says, where am I going to get a drummer as good as you? And then when he realizes he can't get him, he says,
anyone can play the drums, Billy. So fuck off!
He's really, really pissed.
He is pissed because, the guy said you can use my drums until you find another person. Like, he understands. Actually, he's pretty self-aware. He says, I know what's going to happen if I stay in this situation. So I feel bad that I'm doing this, but you can use my drums until you find a new drummer. So I'm trying to make the most of the best of the situation the way it is. And Jimmy doesn't want to hear it, because Jimmy just cares about what he wants.
Well, but it's not just what he wants. The drummers, of course, it's not just what he wants. Well, the band wants there to be a band.
Sure. The band does, yeah.
If I'm directing a movie and we're right about when we're going to shoot and one of my actors says, hey, you know what, I'm not going to do it. Yes, that actor has fucked me. He's fucked the whole movie. He's fucked, everybody's been working really hard on this.
Mm-hmm.
That, and that's the thing. I have many times felt I'm the captain of the ship and I've brought everyone to this shitty place. Everything's falling apart. It's all on me. Everyone's here waiting for me to solve the problem.
Right.
And maybe I'm going to let everybody down.
But that's not what Jimmy's doing. I get what you're talking about. But Jimmy is about himself, which is why he interviews himself all the time, which is why it's his ego to put this band together. He tells them what direction they're going in. He tells them what kind of music they're going to be playing. He tries to get them out of family events or gatherings so that they can be doing gigs. And in this moment, when the drummer says to him, I know what I'm doing. I know Jimmy's better impulses initially react. And then after it's his frustration. And he even kicks the dude's
he loses
van. So that tells you right there, he's a bit of an impertinent child who isn't getting what he wants. So
it's so fun.
I hear what you're saying, of course, but I don't see you in him. necessarily.
It's so funny, as often happens, and I realized this thinking about how you talked about Imelda saying, I got this family thing.
Yeah.
And you said, oh, well, that's what producers do. And then I said, well, that's what he should do, you know. And what's interesting is like how you and I see it, this character of Jimmy, differently. And of course, everything you said is totally right. He's literally interviewing himself. It is all about him on a fundamental level. It's so funny because the plot of The Assistants is there's this main character who is a producer who is trying to make all these things happen. He is one of the hardest things in that film was I wanted everyone to like him and to believe that he did things for altruistic reasons. And it was very hard to pull that off. And I think I only partially succeeded. Right. And it's very much a similar situation where there's a moment where it's all falling apart and he feels responsible for it. But you could also interpret it as it's all about him, you know?
But what you said at the beginning of this thing is what'd you say? What's the more dramatic choice?
Yes.
The more dramatic choice is that he's a complete and utter asshole and trying to get what he needs. That's the more dramatic choice. The harder choice is to try to save him or make him redemptive while he's trying to put this thing together as a producer.
Well,
it's not easy.
I think, and you know, maybe this will be too much of a digression, but for my particular aesthetic, I don't like I don't like evil characters. That's just my thing. I'm more interested in exposing why a good person does an evil thing. You know what I mean? That's more interesting to me. Okay. And but it's hard. But it's like a, you know, what's the degree of difficulty for your dive off the high board? You know, and it's like you could either the making of someone an asshole is a lower degree of difficulty. Making someone you really like who's positive and then does a negative thing and now you have mixed feelings about them, that's a higher degree of difficulty.
It is.
And I don't think Jimmy's an asshole. I think
no, I don't think so either.
Yeah.
I just think Jimmy wants what he wants.
Alan Parker's favorite joke is the piano player in the confessional talking about him feeling lust for these women, and he's humming When a Man Loves a Woman by Marvin Gaye, and the priest corrects him.
Percy Sledge. Huh? It was Percy Sledge did that particular song. I have the album.
Oh. Which, by the way, I always think When a Man Loves a Woman is Marvin Gaye.
Really?
Yeah, it always
doesn't sound anything like Marvin Gaye.
I don't know why I always had that in my head.
I would think Otis Redding would be more believable than Marvin Gaye. Marvin Gaye's smooth.
And now we go and grab the chips truck that we saw Bernie in originally, and someone says, we can't travel in that shit heap.
Buddy Holly's last words.
What?
We can't travel in that shit heap.
Before he flew to meet his destiny in that star-crossed night.
I love that joke.
And I love, too, that people come up and ask the truck for food, you know, because they're in a food truck. And they go, no, we're serving soul. And where did we get our drummer? Mika, our crazy bouncer guy, is now going to be the drummer. Next gig, they're even better. They're really starting to kill it. And then the sax goes off on a solo. And there are these looks. And later on at the urinal, I love this conversation.
I went through hell learning how to play the sax. Now I can play it. I want to get better. I want to express myself.
Which is a totally normal thing to happen in the band, you know? Right. And Joey's response is, and I love this line.
That's commendable, Brother Dean, but what you were playing was not soul. Soul solos are part of the song. They have corners.
I don't know what they have corners means, but it sounds like a really deep statement about a certain kind of music. And I'd be curious to hear a musician talk about it.
A corner is regimented, right? A
Yes.
corner is regimented. So that's what he's saying is that you can go for a long time, but then you got to hit that corner and turn. What he's doing is flowing into a room with no walls.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
You were spiraling. That's jazz.
I'm just trying to stretch myself.
Jazz is musical wanking. If you want to wank, use that thing in your hand, not your sax.
Oh, I was mad when he said that.
Well, and this is the thing, is here that we're seeing throughout. Here's the seeds of why this band is not going to work.
Right, exactly.
I think on some intuitive level, watching this film even for the first time, you know this isn't going to work.
You're hoping against hope, like all great films like this. Every time you watch it too, you delude yourself that maybe this time, which is the gift of movies like this when they're done well.
Exactly. We go into Chain of Fools. Commitment-ettes are killing it now.
For 5 long years, I thought you were my man.
Who shows up but the guys who want the equipment? They come in, they find Jimmy, they're hassling him. The drummer watches it. Jimmy pulls out his money. They start to get rough with Jimmy, and the drummer, Mika, flies off the stage, headbutts them, and just goes right at him.
Yeah.
Which
I loved.
Yeah, and the band is like, oh, holy shit. And Joey goes, no, you got to keep playing.
Yeah.
And the fight gets ugly, and the drummer, fights his way free, picks up Jimmy, the bad guys exit. We get back on the stage, and Jimmy immediately says, let's hear it for the hardest working band in the world. And he goes around and introduces the band, like right after the fight.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Commitments.
And they finish the song big to cheers.
Yeah.
This is a moment.
This is the apex of them as a band.
I think what I was thinking about that too. Is like, well, this and Tenderness, Try a Little Tenderness.
Yeah, Try a Little Tenderness.
Like,
yeah.
I think that's the musical apex.
Yes.
But I think this moment is when they're most together.
Yes.
Because even they're sort of completely together. Whereas Try a Little Tenderness, there's tons of conflict, but musically they're together.
Yeah.
We're outside a fancy hotel, and up comes Joey, and we've gotten a great review in the paper because there was a reporter at the last gig, and this is where Wilson Pickett is saying, and the question is, can Joey get Wilson Pickett to come?
Maybe I better handle this thing alone.
Why? I want to meet the man.
It's personal.
Never mind personal. You told me him and you were friends and he'd do us a favour.
I know, but the last time I met Wilson, things were a bit sticky.
This is again, wait, does he really know Wilson Pickett?
Yeah, right.
But
personal stuff.
But Jimmy goes and finds the reporter and says, Wilson Pickett's going to jam with us. Mm-hmm. So now we put everything is about this night. This is the big gig. We've got an article in the paper. We've got some attention, and Wilson Pickett is coming.
Jimmy puts the pressure on the situation. Yep.
It's before the show. There's lots of incidental dialogue, all of which is really fun. The sax guy comes in a new suit and a new haircut. A jazz haircut.
If you say so.
Yeah. And then Deco comes over and talks to the piano player, basically says, you're educated. I've got an offer to be in another band. Maybe it'll be a good move. What a moron.
It really is.
And they announce it like, look, what are you talking? You're going to go to another band? And everyone's like, what? And the drummer comes at him and he knocks down the curtain where the girls are changing, and they're angry at each other because Imelda comes in with with Joey, and now Bernie's like, wait, what's going on here? And we see all this anger, all this yelling. Yeah. Jimmy tells them about Wilson Pickett. They don't believe him, and the band has decided not to wear the suits.
So you can wear jock straps for all I care. Just try and behave like you know what you're doing.
They are arguing and fighting, and then hard cut into Mustang Sally, and they're playing great.
Mustang Sally!
Laughing, smiling. The whole illusion that they're having a good time.
Well, and this is the thing. I mean, you can have great on-stage chemistry with a person that you're really pissed at.
Yeah.
You know?
I don't know how. Yeah.
I mean, you and I are pissed at each other right now. It's not true. It's not true.
It's not true at all.
Not true.
Tell me, Jimmy, when would you think was the big turning point for the Commitments? I think it has to be when Wilson Pickett came and played with us in a small club in Dublin. That must have been quite a thrill, Jimmy. It will be if the fucker turns up, Terry.
Look, whoever turns up. But once again, he's putting this pressure on the situation. He's putting this expectation on the situation. So he's setting himself up for a massive fall.
Yes, but what I'll also say is, if Wilson Pickett shows up, this is a turning be a turning point.
You're absolutely right. And when you're young, that's how you look at these things.
Yeah.
You're like, you get excited, you build it up because it's possible. But when you're older, you go, I've been let down so many times. We'll see if it happens. But when you're young, it's like, oh, I can't wait. And then you're hurt or you're disappointed. Yeah.
100%. I mean, it's possible. You could go to an audition with one of your buddies and they could find you and you could become a star. That could happen. But when you're older, exactly what you say is most of the time what happens is Wilson Pickett doesn't show up.
Yep.
And I've had Wilson Pickett not show up many times. Natalie singing. She sounds amazing.
She's great.
Yeah.
Cause I ain't never loved a man the way that I love you.
And Deco, of course, is watching from the crowd with his beard, not happy. The arrangements, by the way, of this music is so good. And you know, everyone's together. Glenn Hansard doing a guitar solo. The way that the girls are dancing. Everyone is just in the groove. They take their big bows, huge cheers. Still no Wilson Pickett. Yeah. And then we go into the beginnings of Try a Little Tenderness, Otis Redding. This is one of my favorite songs of all time. I think it is such a great song. And their performance of this, I'm not going to say it comes up to Otis Redding level.
Oh, yeah.
But it comes close.
Oh, she may be weary, and young girls, they do get weary, wearing that same old shaggy dress.
So, Try a Little Tenderness is a song that I actually teach in one of my lectures at school.
Oh, nice.
And here's why. So I use it to illustrate how music rights work, because there's something really interesting about it, which is, do you know who recorded the first #1 hit of Try a Little Tenderness?
No.
Bing Crosby, 1936.
What?
Try a Little Tenderness is a Tin Pan Alley song. It's a standard. And if you listen to Bing Crosby's recording, it is the song, but it isn't the song that we know.
She may be weary, women do get weary, wearing the same shabby dress. And when she's weary, try a little tenderness.
And that Otis takes it, you know, songs have like an A, B, like an A, B, A, C structure. And the B is the chorus, the A is the verse, and the C is usually like a middle part where it goes into something else. That's kind of classic popular song structure. The C section, which is what ends Try a Little Tenderness, where that song builds and then Otis goes off with the
Squeeze her, don't tease her, never leave her. Get to one, drop, find little tenderness.
that whole thing, that's all Otis. That's not in the song. Yeah. So here's how music rights work. If you and I wanted to buy a song for the Cine-Files, we have to pay two people. We have to pay the people that wrote the song and the people that perform the song. So if we wanted to have U2 perform Yesterday from the Beatles, we would have to pay for the Lennon and McCartney rights for the song, and then we'd have to pay U2 to perform the song. This, I think, would be out of our price range for the Cine-Files. When the Commitments does this song, and when really anybody does Try a Little Tenderness, they're doing Otis's version of the song. Nobody's doing Bing Crosby's version of the song. And what makes the song great is everything Otis added to it. If we had to buy the rights to that song, we would pay the Commitments, who are the performers, and the Tin Pan Alley guy, whoever owns the rights to the guy who wrote the song. Otis gets nothing.
Wow.
It has nothing to do with him. He didn't write the song. He's not performing the song. So even though he completely transformed the song and everyone's copying him, he doesn't have any rights to it. He gets no money for it at all. It's crazy, right?
That's a shame.
Squeeze her, you tease her, never leave her. You got to, you got to, you got to, you got to.
The performance is just stunning. And it's so interesting to me. They are peaking musically now.
Yeah.
There's so many times where I just in my notes are like, man, they're killing it. Wow, this is really good. I would say this is the musical climax of the film. This is their high point. As soon as we have this amazing musical moment, we are immediately going to fight again.
Wilson Pickett finished an hour ago.
I told you I spoke to the man. I did my best.
That's not what you said. You said it was no problem. You said it was all fixed. If I find you been bullshitting me, I'll ram that trumpet up your arse. I swear it.
There's lots of tension between the drummer and the singer, between the girls, with the jazz guy. Everyone is upset. And I was thinking about this is like, success has led them to have confidence. And confidence has led them to have conflict.
Because they have egos now.
Because now they have egos. And then again, hard cut. We're back on stage and we're playing again.
So you lot couldn't get tickets to Wilson Pickett tonight, no? You're supposed to come and see us, you know? I'm serious, only our manager fucked up.
Oh, awful. A small label wants to sign them. And they finish their song. They head back to the dressing room celebrating. Everyone is happy for about 10 seconds.
Yeah.
Then the arguing starts again, and Jimmy is out signing a deal, ready to sign a deal with this record contract, except the guy goes, hey, is there any problems with the band?
No, Dave. You know how it is. First rule of rock and roll. Once they get a taste, they become overnight arseholes.
It's after the gig. The drummer's carrying out some of the equipment. Girls are talking to Deco, and man, they get right into a fight between Mika and Deco. He headbutts him, hits him with a garbage can. I mean, just takes him out.
He does.
Just as Jimmy comes out to break that up, Natalie yells from upstairs, like, come on, they're killing each other. He runs upstairs. Everyone is there fighting, and he says,
fuck it. Fuck the bloodies.
And it's outside. Deca gets a bloody, and the girls immediately come up to him and ask for his autograph.
Yeah.
Jimmy's walking, and Joey pulls up.
You lied to me, Joey. I always bought everything you told us, and I'm probably the only one who ever did. But you lied to me.
And I love what he does here. He says, look, I know you're hurting now.
Look, I know you're hurting now, but in time you'll realise what you've achieved.
I've achieved nothing.
You're missing the point. Success of the band was irrelevant. You raised their expectations of life, you lifted their horizons. Sure, we could have been famous and made albums and stuff, but that would have been predictable. This way it's poetry.
Yep. This is why I brought it up way at the beginning of the show. I mean, this is the moment of the movie for me. This is the whole reason for the movie and why you have a character like the Lips in there, because he's supposed to tell you how to feel about this movie. You could walk away from this movie angry about the fact that ego destroyed them, but he frames it in a certain way that you can walk away from this movie with a sense of what could have been, the tragic sense of what could have been, and that makes it more magical.
I think that's exactly right. And I think about 20-something-year-old Steve, who saw it, who was Jimmy and was dreaming of success and stardom. And so for me, watching this movie then, I think I was sort of, oh, they were so close.
Yeah.
They were about to be stars. And I don't think I was capable of hearing this thing that Joey says.
Right.
And now, as a person who has had Wilson Pickett not show up a lot and gone like, oh, no, it is the journey.
Yeah.
You know, there isn't magical success that solves all your problems. Even the people I know that have had magical success, it hasn't solved all their problems. You know, and so learning like, oh no, enjoy the poetry, enjoy the moment. That's what it's about.
There's a great line of Jerry Maguire when he's having a flashback to his old agent. Or it's just it's not his old, I guess it's not his old mentor, or maybe it is his old mentor, because if this isn't right, nothing else matters. If this isn't right, it doesn't matter. And that's what he's saying. Like, you know, he's saying you got to look at it in a certain way so that you can frame it correctly and savor what happened here.
Alan Parker says that this whole film is about giving someone something they can be proud of. It's not about success. It's about the pleasure of creating.
Yeah.
Jimmy walks away from Joey, and then a limo pulls up. A guy asks him for directions to the club. And he says, the club's closed now. And we hear the chauffeur say to someone in the back seat, should we go back to the hotel, Mr. Pickett? It's such a great thing to happen at the end.
Yep.
Because I don't think it proves that everything Joey said was true, but it proves that some of what he said is true. And it gives you that feeling of, oh, so close.
So close. Yeah.
I was trying to think of what moment it reminded me of, and it took me like a whole day to remember what it is. In the very end of Midnight Run, De Niro looks at his watch and says, we would have made it.
Oh, yeah.
That's what this moment
great.
is. They would have made it.
Yeah.
And then we hear the strains of tenderness starting up, and we're in another interview and asking how he felt at the time. And then he asks him, what happened to all the people?
I still see Derek and Outspan. They're still in the music business, mostly in Grafton Street.
Cut to them busking, which I think is the word they have on the street.
Yeah.
They're street musicians. The thing I think about is oh, Glenn Hansard was there playing on the street until we found him, a decade later and once.
Yeah. Maybe the same guy.
Which is a movie I love.
Yeah, Once is great.
And that album from Glenn Hansard is just an astounding album.
Maritzka Ingova is the girl.
She's great.
They work well. They actually dated through the whole movie and then broke up afterwards.
Yep.
So.
And now we check in on everyone else. Bernie doing country and western music. Dean is a successful jazz musician. Our doctor has become a doctor. Yeah. I like that when he has someone say he says
Say
And Mika, he has his own band, believe it or not, Terry. Quite a success.
Cut to him in a punk band with his mic in the mouth, which is how Alan Parker first saw him. Decca gets a recording contract.
He's an even bigger prick now. Oh, excuse my language, Terry.
It is Alan Parker at the mixing board.
Yeah, right.
In that shot. And then they ask about Natalie, who's become very successful. We see her in like a black and white music video sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, but is it true about you and her? I don't believe all you read in the papers, Terry. But yes, it's true to say we are fond of one another.
And we asked what's happened to Joey, and he's in North America sending postcards about playing with people that have been dead for 10 years.
So looking back, Jimmy, what do you feel you've learned most from your experience with the commitments? Well, that's a tricky question, Terry. But as I always say, we skipped the light fandango, turned cartwheels across the floor. I was feeling kind of seasick, but the crowd called out for more. That's very profound, Jimmy. What does it mean? I'm fucked if I know, Terry.
all you gotta do.
Roll credits. It's such I'll say what I said before. It's such a joyful movie for something that goes really sad.
Yeah.
The reception, it opened narrow. It was like a $14 million budget. It grossed about $80 million that year as it opened up wider, had even stronger home video, decent reviews. Ebert gave it a thumbs up, but Siskel gave it a thumbs down. The soundtrack went triple platinum. I mean, is a huge, huge soundtrack. In a lot of ways, the soundtrack's bigger than the movie.
Yeah.
A lot of people wanted them to be a real band. And they actually did, when they were doing promotion for the movie, they did play with Wilson Pickett. A bunch of them did go off and have their solo careers.
Yeah.
Some of them have gotten together and played as a band several times since then.
Yeah.
The movie was so influential in Ireland, there's actually postage stamps with the commitments on them.
That's awesome.
Andrew Strong went out and performed, did open for Elton John and Ray Charles. It was nominated for a few BAFTA awards and won a couple. And there was even a London stage production that had over 1,000 shows, which I never saw.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the thing that Alan Parker said about it. He said, this is not his favorite movie. He doesn't think this is his best movie. This is the movie he had the most fun on. Every day he woke up excited to go make the commitments.
Yeah, that makes sense. You can tell it bleeds through the film when you're watching it.
100%. John, do you have final thoughts on the commitments?
Yeah, I think this film is, once you watch it, it's one of those films that if it gets its hooks in you, it'll never let you go. And you will always come back and rewatch it and experience it and feel like you're watching it for the first time, because these characters are so authentic, so real. This journey is so universal. How many of us come, and a majority of us who want to strive to achieve something in the world, come from tougher upbringings, tougher backgrounds, hard scrabble lives, because we see achievement as a way out. We see success and fame as a way out. And a lot of us who want to achieve that quietly believe we're a little more special than most everybody else who grew up in the same area as we did. And so we think if we just push hard enough, we can get there. And one of the brilliant things about this movie is that they taste that possibility so perfectly, so sweetly at the apex, just before it all falls apart in their hands, right? Like building this incredible sandcastle right before the wave hits. And all you have is the memory of the sandcastle that you did it. And so what they walk away from this movie is the fact that this could have been an actual band. You actually fool yourself into thinking that this could have been a great, great band. And that's the joy of this movie, is realizing that those moments are as precious as any moments of success that you achieve in life, is coming close to achieving that success or achieving that success before anyone sees it, or maybe not enough people come see it. That's not what matters. What matters is your personal journey with it. And did you taste what you wanted to get out of it artistically and creatively? And if you did, that's the real achievement, not some gold trinket or some silver trinket you get from anybody else, from some, subjective body. It's about your journey with it. And so as an artist, I think this speaks volumes to people who want to achieve some kind of measure of personal success or creative success in any endeavor they go after. Plus, it's incredibly funny.
Yeah. It's everything you say is how I feel. And the thing I would add is there are certain movies that take you into a world that you've never been to before. And the world seems really, like we talked about with On the Waterfront. That's a world I've never been to, but the world seems really real. And even though it's totally outside of my experience, I feel deeply connected to it. Another one that pops to mind is a totally bizarre example, but Swingers, when it came out, it was like, here's this completely unique world that feels true. And that's how this feels. Even though I grew up as, far from the world of North Dublin as you could imagine, and yet I so connect to all these characters, and part of it's the artist thing, but I just love spending time with them. I enjoy being in the world with them, and I cannot say enough about the music. I mean, it is so good, and there is a lot of music. I mean, I don't know if there's 45 minutes of music performances. There's a ton of music, and it is all so damn good. And again, we talked about degree of difficulty with things you're trying to do. Well, living up to James Brown and Otis Redding and Aretha Franklin and the Marvelettes and all these amazing songs and doing them justice is a really high degree of difficulty. And Alan Parker managed to pull together a bunch of Irish artists that actually completely pull it off. And that is just a joy to watch.
Absolutely.
So that's what we think about the commitments. Of course, we always want to hear what you think. Give us a search for us on Facebook for the Cine-Files. You can subscribe to the show on iTunes, YouTube, Spotify, Stitcher. Please leave your reviews on iTunes. Comments on YouTube are always fun. If you want to support the show, you can do it on patreon.com/the Cine-Files, where you can listen to our Cine-Files shorts, hear combined versions of our multi-part episodes, and a bunch of other content, and even have your questions and movie picks come onto the show. You can buy the commitments or stream it along with every other movie we've ever reviewed on cinephiles.net. And you can reach the show at Cine_Files on Twitter, the Cine-Files podcast on Instagram. You can reach me personally at SR Morris on Twitter and SR Morris1 on Instagram. John, how about you?
You can always reach me at The Roca Says on Twitter and on Instagram. And, of course, please come on over to the Outlaw Nation outlet channel, or the Outlaw Nation channel, which is the outlet that I'm building up there. It's youtube.com/John Roca Says. Go and check out all the stuff we got going on there, please.
And I think that's it for this week. We will see you next time on the Cine-Files with another great film.